Hey folks, it's Hooves of Doom. I'm just doing a quick kind of reveal show about the releases from LVO from last night, and lots of cool things. And it's really the first reveal show since like the New Year Open Day that they had. Lots going on. I'm kind of regretting maybe not going, and some really cool new developments that I thought might have been revealed at Adepticon later this year. So I think this is going to be a really interesting year. There's lots of interesting releases and a lot of potential. Like the more kind of new armies or new takes on armies that AOS continues to produce here, that line of models is really getting fleshed out in really interesting ways. So I'm looking forward to this, and there's lots of cool things going on. So obviously, from the AOS perspective, the biggest release is the new Lumineth Realm-Lords. These are the so-called pointy elves that were teased, I guess, at the beginning of this month. And man, they look pretty nice. You know, they have a lot of the similar aesthetical connections to the old high elves, and I mean, they're just pretty gorgeous. They have the kind of the little scale features on their armor. They have like the little plumes. Very similar type of paint scheme. In this case, it's kind of the cream color with blue as opposed to kind of white and blue. But all in all, I'm pretty excited for this army for the simple reason that I've always felt, a lot of AOS armies obviously are derived from the existing model base of the old world. And when they transitioned into the new game, most armies have slowly kind of coalesced, right? They've found some sort of home for the most part. One of the biggest, apart from armies that were completely discontinued, like Bretonnians and, well, to some extent, Tombkeens, but Tombkeens in some way have a very aesthetical connection, obviously, to the Ossiarch Bone Reapers. And the same is true with the old High Elves and these new ones. And that's one of the things I'm pretty excited for because, I had a pretty big High Elf collection for Warhammer Fantasy, and so I've always felt a little annoyed that, like, High Elf Spearmen and Archers, which is, the most numerous of those models, were really kind of phased out of the game and never had a home, right? All the other specialty High Elf models found some sort of home and some sort of alliance somewhere. It was never particularly fleshed out until the Cities of Sigmar book, but they were at least present in the game. And now I feel like they're somewhat back. Like, the old High Elf Spearmen obviously don't quite compare to these new models really at all, but they share enough of a aesthetical connection that I wouldn't be like, booed. Well, I might be booed, but I probably wouldn't be driven out of the room in shame if I actually used them as these new High Elves. You maybe do some conversions, because even like their spears and stuff are identical to the old High Elf Spearmen. And so that's interesting to me. I like the fact that, because most of my collection, as I've been saying, has a place in the modern game, but there are parts of it that don't have a place anywhere. And so to give them some sort of home is exciting to me. And these are absolutely terrific models. And of course now there's like the new Cavalry option, which again, very similar to the Silver Helms, much better models, obviously, but again, very much aesthetic connection. Even the banners and everything, these are clearly a kind of AOS version of what was the High Elf faction. So this is exciting. And then they have this gorgeous infantryman on the Rock of the Dual Swords. Really cool. And I like how like even some of like the fins and such is kind of a, obviously the Deepkin are Teclis's spoiled experiment versus like these pure the pure good version of the elves that he created. And so, but I like that there's some connection here and some of the aesthetics that, even the fact that they have the scale armor, as I was saying, that does trace back to Warhammer Fantasy. but it's very evident, you know, in armor of the IDNF Deepkin as well. So even those types of connections, so that you have some sort of coherent elf aesthetic, even though they're completely different realms, completely different overall looks, which I do like. And this guy's just phenomenal. Like, he's so cool. He's really cool. Really interesting pose. They really love the rocks with this faction. They're all standing on some sort of rock, it seems. And then the new Techless model, which I'll have to see how it actually proportions out. It's an interesting model. It's a little weird with that little griffin kind of statuesque figure there. I'll be really interested to see what type of rules, if he's really on the level of a god. And but all in all, a really cool and interesting new look for this model. Makes the old model look quite terrible in comparison. But it's also strange enough that I think some people just won't like it or will convert it. But I think it has an interesting degree of symmetry. It's kind of a little bit off balance, but it just looks cool. Like it's an interesting new thing on the table that we haven't seen much of. It has some connection to like the Stormcast type of weird flying creatures, but this is kind of distinctly its own elven version. And of course we got the new Seraphon book coming up, which is good. And I'm not sure if we'll get new models. It might just be kind of a new phase. So far, the only reveal we have from LVO is the new terrain piece. And I guess they are sticking with the old dinosaur Aztec theme here. I guess that blows all my theories out of the water. But it's fine. I think it's an interesting little piece. It's probably one of the... Well, I just said it was interesting, but it's probably one of the most... little more on the dull side in some ways. I think it has, obviously... I'm a little conflicted with these types of terrain pieces because I'm not a big fan of the 0 points. Right? 0 points means that it's a mandatory thing to put on the table because there's no loss, it's only gain. And not only that, it's a mandatory purchase. Like, I have tons of armies now that don't have their terrain piece, and it's like, well, I could play that army, but I'm missing this piece that like would always benefit the army and cost no points, and I don't actually have. And so I'm a little conflicted about them, but you know, it's hard to make a pyramid look cool and not just echo something like what the Necrons have. But you know, it is what it is. I am looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with Seraphon. Seraphon were the first release after Stormcast for AOS, and I'll be interested to see what the future of that faction is. And then for 40k, we have some really cool Adeptus Mechanica stuff. And an interesting army because it's really been rolled out in several waves of models. And I own an Ad Mech army. I've never played with it, but I never had like a real sense of the balance about whether it needed new models or not. But I'm happy to see these. They're really cool models. I must say that one of my favorite Warhammer Fantasy kits was like the Engineer on Mechanical Steed, right? That's an army or model I don't have that it's definitely on the wish list for like cool models that kind of escape my grasp. And yeah, these are right in that same lane, right? Like these, you know, it's Cavalry and 40k have always been a little weird, like for like Imperial Guard and stuff. These things fit right within it, right? It's just perfect, and a lot of cool conversion potential here, even in AOS factions. Yeah, lots of cool stuff. And there's obviously 2 different versions here. You know, if you want a new version of a Pistolier for your Cities of Sigmar, there's some interesting options. And yeah, very, very cool. Yeah, I love the look of the Ad Mech army just in general. I think it's one of the most quintessential 40k armies. And then they have the new kind of, again, like I wasn't quite expecting these, but kind of a jump troop type unit for Ad Mech, and it goes along with their new aircraft that's coming out, very much using like the aesthetics of the Italian Renaissance and things like this to really promote kind of technology, but a very esoteric type of technology that's drawn into history and has these themes that are interesting and new, and a new way of pursuing technology that the Ad Mech is kind of known for. And yeah, I mean, they're cool. I don't think you'll ever hear me say that I absolutely dislike models. And then they tease I'm not that I don't really pay that much attention to like rumor websites and stuff, but it looks like there's a Ghazghkull model coming out for orcs. And now the original Ghazghkull, I think it's still a cool model, but it's definitely kind of showing its age. It's not significantly bigger than a lot of other kind of orc bosses at this point. And it came out in Codex Armageddon, like about 2001. It's a pretty old model at this point. Metal or fine cast. It definitely needed a new version. And much like the Abaddon one, they're kind of teasing it here. And of course, they're saying the most important model is his little grot guy that goes on the base. But I'll be interested to see what the full thing is, and if this actually means that there's kind of a larger orc release or not. Obviously, the Orktober was a little underwhelming for some people when they had that a little over a year ago. But I'll be happy to see the model. We'll see what it looks like. And then Warband for Warhammer Underworlds, kind of a Megakin of Nurgle one, which basically 3 Blightlords, which are really cool. Blightlord models are absolutely disgusting, but they're one of the most characterful units in the game. Lots of options in the kit, and lots of kind of character that make each model look, obviously the same unit, but dramatically different from one another. And this is another good example of this, where this is a really cool warband. I'm very excited to kind of get this and to incorporate that into my existing army, and to play a little bit on Warhammer Underworlds if I can too. And they released the Grota? Oh man, how am I getting this wrong here? Zote. It's a Zote. For Blackstone Fortress. And this is one, again, like Blackstone Fortress is a really interesting medium for just exploring underdeveloped alien races, right? Because it's kind of a role-playing-esque type game where you just need one-off models, right? You don't need entire ranges. And so the fact that they're doing like the Amble and now this, there's just some really cool ideas here. And there's lots of other weird aliens in the background of 40k lore that there's art and there's narrative discussion of, but no actual models. And so I'm really looking forward to this game getting further developed, if only because more cool models like this get expanded upon. I don't know if we'll ever see like a femur AOS race, but if they made a board game like this, they could definitely be a part of that. And anytime that you get a chance to just explore some weird off corner of the lore, that's a good opportunity, right? It's something that doesn't happen that much. They don't require a lot of investment, and I think it's kind of it's very much like a Dragon Ogre almost in terms of the sculpt, but it's a cool model. And then we had some 40k, 30k, jeez, Horus Heresy news here. Some new rules coming out. I never actually did pick up the index books from Forge World. It was kind of on a wish list, and now it's, I guess, pushed even farther back as the new books will supersede the old ones. But we have a new model for the character series. And the character series is honestly, in my opinion, the best part of the Horus Heresy model range. They're just fantastic, unique sculpts. They're almost every single one is like a mini diorama. Really interesting. And here we have like a White Scars type character. That little Mogu helmet, I'm going to call it Mogu, I think. I was just playing some World of Warcraft, and they're kind of like a Mogu kind of race that's based upon Mongolian Asian aesthetics, and it's funny because like that helmet's like identical. I don't know much about what they're actually drawing from aesthetically from like a historical perspective, but I think it's an interesting look, and it definitely fits with White Scars. It's just nothing that I would have expected. But I'm glad it's there. It's really cool. And then I guess the last little thing is a little more of the tease of, I think it's called Angels of Blood, their upcoming CGI. I don't know if it's a series or just a standalone kind of movie. I'm very looking for. I think it looks pretty good, so I am looking forward to this. I'm always a little bit pessimistic about these types of things because I have a lot of high hopes for things like Ultramarines, and they kind of fell a little flat. But that's now been about 10 years since, almost exactly 10 years since that came out, and there's been a lot of improvements in development in computer animation. And so I'm hopeful that we get some sort of traction here. Now, obviously, everything is 40K related. So if you're an AOS fan, although they just kind of said that they were going to do maybe something with AOS as well. But I want traction. I want these things to be a success so that it makes sense to invest further and do other things. Right? I want full-fledged movies of Warhammer. On Warhammer topics, just because I want to see them, just because I think they're interesting stories, and it's a very much an interesting visual world that doesn't get, we have all this wonderful art, and to bring that to life and to really make an impact, I think it would be really cool. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. LVO releases were pretty cool, pretty interesting. And this year, I think, could be pretty amazing. We'll see. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.